This is the Uptick Newswire Stock Day podcast, sponsored by InvestorsHangout.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube to stay up to date on penny stock news and interviews, public information on OTC, pink sheets, and microcap stocks from around the world, with your host, Everett Jolly.
On today's show, we have a returning guest, and you could say it's been way overdue. He's on the show probably over a year ago. At that time, his stock was trading around 15 cents a share. Now it's trading at 49 cents. We're talking about Global Cannabis Applications Corp. And what they do, they're actually a global leader in designing, developing, marketing, and acquiring innovative data technologies for the cannabis industry. They trade on the OTCQB, ticker symbol FUAPH. They also trade on the Canadian Stock Exchange, FUN. And with us today is the CEO of that company, Brad Moore. Brad, welcome to the show.
Hey, Everett. Glad to be back.
You know, last time you were on the show, you guys were doing a little bit of a different business model than you are now. So tell us about the change of the company from the fundamental applications to the global cannabis applications.
Well, I'll tell you the first biggest change is I woke up at 3 a.m. after we decided to change the name, and I knew I had to change the ticker symbol. And I said, hey, I wonder if APP is available. And I checked, and it was. So I stayed up for the next 3 hours calling the CSE, the Canadian Securities Exchange, trying to get it done. And I secured the ticker symbol APP. And I think that's pretty apropos considering, where we started and how we continue to build the business. So if anybody's interested, under the CSE, it's CSC, the Canadian Securities Exchange, and the ticker symbol is APP. So really what we've done, last time we talked a lot about using digital input devices, and at the core of the conversation was about data, right? And I've always been a big believer, being a Kodak guy, everything in the world runs on data. If, like we said, if something's sitting at Walmart in the end cap and there's shampoo there's a reason why it's there, right? Because it sells more. And you know what? That conversation's never changed, except we feel that we've gone into a direction now that's, I think, instead of trying to get, kids buy more Nike tennis shoes because somebody sold a tennis racket and so forth. Now we're actually trying to decode, demystify, and standardize some of the approaches about health, and help put good medical grade cannabis products. And I'm not talking about joints that people smoke. I'm talking about inhalers, dabs, and oils with a focus on the medicine and the science behind it, on shelves in a properly regulated market.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys are working on the cannabinoids and stuff like that. I was reading some of your past press releases, and I wanted to ask you, working with CannaLife, there are 17,000 users. Can you bring us up to speed on that? Yeah,
for sure. Like we're just talking about, what's interesting about the whole thing is, for us, what we've done is working with some of the, just so you know, we had a footprint in India before. We now have employees there developing input technologies, which is just another fancy way of saying different digital apps and ways to capture data. But most importantly, we have an office in Australia where we have a brain trust around artificial intelligence. We have two of the top AI guys in the world, Damon Rashid and Dr. Eugene Dubinsky. And then we also have our Canadian operations. And I just opened our office, our European office, in Vilnius, Lithuania, of all places, for blockchain.
Wow.
And right now, we're just getting ready to open a desk office in Tel Aviv, Israel. And there's a very specific reason around that. Really, what we've done is, when you talk about the apps and the users, that's one part of a stack of user inputs. What we realized, the reason, besides the kind of the people thinking that, hey, it's smoking drugs leads to this and all that other kind of stuff. Naturally in your body, there's components of cannabis that are reoccurring. And with not getting into the math, it's kind of the deeper level stuff around CBD, and it's an anti-inflammatory. And, I'm a guy who's 52 years old. I was in the Army. I played too much rugby, and I got a lot of injuries. But I'll tell you, I would never go buy something from a kid in a dispensary who's going to sell me something to smoke. It's just not what I do. Right. So I realized at the same time, I just don't want to take a whole bunch of pills. that leave long tail effects, right? You got to take it with this, and it might help with this, and it's just, you know, medicine nowadays kind of, it's great, it's amazing, it's brilliant, and when you take manufactured drugs, as we know with things to do with the opioid crisis, you get manufactured effects afterwards, right? And so what we've done is we said, okay, let's look at the hundreds and hundreds of years of experience. And most importantly, let's look at hundreds of years of experience of cannabis being used in Canada and Colorado and California and Oregon and Nevada and very progressive states that have realized that there is a medicinal benefit.
Absolutely.
And since it's a plant, it's really hard to test. How do you say this plant is good for this? Because it's like saying, what ear of corn is going to help you with, with a headache?
Right.
So what we did is, working with our AI guys, we kind of took some baseline information from the top leading Israeli clinical studies and partners out of Israel. And then we're working with the top, from studies from some of the top licensed producers coming out of Canada who've been surveying their clients in the United States for years. Say, did it do this? Did it do that? Did it do this? What was your effect? And then what we did is we said, let's look at the social media and that digital world of inputs. And we basically package that up. Now, I'm going to use a term here that's scary to a lot of people, but really what we did is, remember CDOs, right? Convertible debt things, right? Good mortgage, bad mortgage. Well, really, I hate to say it. What we've done is we've used AI, we're using an artificial weighting system to say, okay, we know the baseline, those are the good mortgages. Those are the ones that are control study, and everybody's answered those questions. We know that in the LPs, everybody's answered those questions, but they did it at home. So there's value, there's great value, right? And then on top of that, the guys online, what we know is they're getting in, they're pressing buttons and doing things. And this goes to CannaLife. What we've done is we're saying, look, there's a lot of missing information, but the cool thing with machine learning, you can actually extrapolate. If 10,000 people did this, 1 + 2 + 3 = 6, and I press 1, I press 2, but I didn't press 3, but a whole bunch of other people, just like Brad, press 3, the machine learning, the AI can actually extrapolate it. And we said we had to weight that, but we had to be honest, because, what we're trying to do is build trust. So using that AI algorithm and that validation process and the weighting, we're actually able to come up and say, you know what, this particular plant from this particular lot has an efficiency, works for helping solve Brad's migraines.
Right.
90% of the time, 90% of the time. And this is where it gets really interesting, because then people say, okay, so it's good, but nobody grows the same plant all the time, right? We all know that.
Yep.
So how do you do it? There's some huge steps have been made, and some leading U.S. companies are getting down the sequencing level of, let's go further, almost into the DNA of the plant. Let's not worry about the name convention. Let's not worry about seed. Let's try to understand. So what we can do then is look at targets. Okay. Now, I want to make sure all our listeners understand, I did not invent this. I did not come up with this. All we did is we looked at what private companies were doing to try to make better products. And we realized that by looking at the thousands of pieces of anecdotal, weighting it correctly, and then measuring it against an accurate target, we could say, wow, this is the right product. Now, if you're a licensed producer, you're a grower, any one of the states or countries, the legal states or Canada or one of the countries, your job is to put the best products on the market, right?
Absolutely. And
especially when you get into grinding them down and doing other things. So how do you do that if you can't count on consistency? You don't know what your start point is, or you think if it regularly changes. Getting down to the market level actually allows people then to focus. And, you and I talked earlier about revenue. Say, well, who doesn't want to know what the most efficient product with the best cost basis? Because, one product, let's say if retail is $30 Canadian a gram, or I'm just using a European number, I know what they're paying in Germany. Well, what if that costs $25, but one's got 80% efficiency and it costs $20? And one has 79% efficiency, it only costs $7 to grow. Shouldn't that be the product we're all focusing on, right? And because once again, the whole goal and the objective is No actual individual product is perfect, but it is a matter of dialing it in. And so for licensed producers, we've got to produce the right products. There's very specific Israeli companies that are now getting to the point where they are able to inject terpenes into base products to actually create a targeted output. And those are the kind of guys that we're working with.
In essence, one of the questions that I know my listeners wanted me to ask you is, how will you guys make your money in 2018, and what kind of current business model we'll be using to make that?
Well, basically it's providing data. It's providing data at multiple levels. It's providing data to the LPs. It's providing data to the dispensaries and the retailers and working with the big pharmacy companies to provide them tools to understand better products to sell. And it's really about helping curve and change it. Now, look, this is the most important part about this, and the only reason we can do this now is because of blockchain. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Blockchain puts everything in a fishbowl, it will interlock blockchain 3.0. And I'm not talking about cryptocurrency. There's a component of that. But blockchain 3.0 locks up every piece of information. So it's really hard for anybody to say, hey, that experience isn't real. Well, yeah, it is. All you have to do is look at it. And I want you to think a bit about that. We can now help affect, by proof of science, our goal is to help affect better product output. And I can tell you right now, the door gets knocked on a lot for us about that, because what we've done is we've created this global brand pushing forward with Citizen Green Technologies. That's the brand name to watch for, with this whole wealth of technologies. And on top of that, what we're doing here, we're incentivizing our users to contribute to the blockchain by using the apps and basically giving them a token. It's a form of a cryptocurrency. We're paying them to contribute and get rewarded from that, and that's really cool. The reason we're in Lithuania, it's now the third home of blockchain. I think you've read in the press releases, Tony G, the poker player, is a member of the Lithuanian Parliament, big partner of ours. He's brought us over here, and that gives us our footprint into that very lucrative EU market, specifically the German side. And that's the model, and that's where the revenue is coming from.
And so what is coming up next, you feel, for your company?
Well, very shortly, we're releasing the white paper. We're launching we're taking our tokens to market. The people that are in behind pushing this and working with us are banks that are getting in behind the project, the same people who are currently doing Bankera. They've raised 100 million euros. That provides us with a breadth of revenue to ability to execute. And from there, like I said, we go through that process. We launched the blockchain. We're already, as we talked about, multiple negotiations about providing that kind of tech base underlying. And from there, you're just going to see more expansion, more growth, and what I believe will lead to a higher stock price.
Global Cannabis Applications Corp has been our company that we're highlighting today here on Stock Day. They got a new ticker symbol on the CSE. It's FUAPF. They also trade on the OTCQB, ticker symbol FUAPH. Take a look at them. You've been listening to Brad Moore. He's the CEO of the company. And he says they're just basically getting into the first inning of a 9-inning ball game here, and they're about ready to explode. Brad, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Please do not wait as long as you did last time to come on the show. Hopefully you'll come back on in 60 days and give us an update of what's going on with all your moving parts with your company.
Thanks for having me.
This program is entirely sponsored and produced by Uptick Newswire, LLC, which is responsible for the content. The opinions and information provided on this program are those of the guests and those of the respective companies they represent, and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff or management of Uptick Newswire. Uptick Newswire encourages all listeners of this program to do their due diligence and research when determining investment strategies that will work for them, or to seek the assistance of an investment professional. The guests of this program may have paid for its distribution and are not directly affiliated with Uptick Newswire or this station.